It was a Friday evening at the Alhambra bar. The place was packed, and everyone was having a great time. The atmosphere, as some might say, was electric. Although I was sitting at the bar with a vodka topic in hand, I wasn't there to drink or dance. I was there to take a reckless step, fully aware that it could land me in serious trouble, trouble that might even lead me to a jail cell. As I sipped my drink, my gaze fell on a couple seated on the other side of the room. I had been watching them for almost an hour. They, or rather he, were the reason I was there. I knew he would be because he was a man of habit. Every Friday evening he'd come here, probably to support his wife's brother, whose band played at the Alhambra every weekend. Finally, what I had been waiting and hoping for happened. A slow waltz started to play, and the couple got up and headed to the dance floor. I gave them a minute or so to get into the rhythm, then stood and walked over. I approached him from behind, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Mind if I cut in?" He turned to see which fool would dare to attack him and his wife. The moment he faced me, I punched him in the jaw. Well, maybe it was more of a hit to the forehead. But who's counting? I put all my weight, all 100 kilos of it, and a month's worth of pent-up anger into that punch, and he went down to the floor. He landed, legs splayed wide, and I seized the moment to give him a solid kick in the groin. His wife stood there staring in horror, unable to believe her eyes, but her hand instinctively reached for what I handed her from my pocket. She looked at the photograph where her husband was intimately involved with my wife. Her expression shifted from horror and disbelief to fury, and she delivered several kicks to her fallen husband, aiming sharply at his groin with her pointed shoes. I returned to my spot at the bar, waiting to see if the authorities would arrive and what they could possibly do to help me. Apparently no one called the police, though a few people did want a word with me. First among them was her brother. The band had paused right after finishing the song her husband and his wife had danced to. He approached me, and I could tell he wasn't planning to get aggressive, so I stayed seated, sipping my drink, waiting. When he reached me, he asked, "Why did you go after Jim?" I took a photo out of my pocket and showed it to him. "This woman is my wife." I said that. He looked at the photo and handed it back to me. "I always told Norma he was a jerk. Maybe now she'll believe me. I think I was mistaken about what I assumed. He came here every Friday to support your band, but it doesn't seem like you two get along." "Well, you're right about that. I can't stand that guy and he knows it. The only reason he shows up every Friday is because my agreement with management includes free drinks for all my family members on Fridays. So why are you still sitting here? I'd have thought you'd want to leave after punching him." I figured the cops might be called, and I'd rather they find me here than at home. Doubt anyone called them. He's not exactly popular, and honestly, many of the people here tonight probably enjoyed the show. I need to get back to the guys. "Don't be a stranger," he said, heading off to find the other band members that I watched as a couple of guys helped the fool off the dance floor and over to his booth. While that was happening, his wife approached me. "Do you have any more of these?" she asked, holding the photo. I'd given her a couple dozen, I replied, "and 2 hours of video. Can I get copies? Of course, you've caused me a bit of trouble tonight, don't you?" "I didn't think sharing it with you would create problems." "Not exactly. He can't drive me home in the state he's in. And even if he could, I wouldn't let him in the house." "No problem. I'll drive you home. I'm ready to go right now." Once we were in the car, I said, "Your brother told me your name is Norma. So since I know your name, I figure you should know mine. I'm Bob Lloyd. Given the circumstances, I can't say I'm exactly thrilled to meet you, but I guess I'm somewhat grateful to get to know you." "Oh, that sounds a bit odd." "I'm grateful because tonight you gave me a gift I don't understand. You gave me my freedom. I've known Jim's been cheating on me for a couple of years now, but I didn't have the money to hire a private investigator to get proof. What you gave me tonight is exactly what I need to get his sorry self out of my life." Sounds a bit like my own story. I'd suspected Vicky was cheating for quite a while, but a month ago I didn't have enough money to hire someone. Then my grandfather passed and left me a bit of money. I never told Vicky exactly how much, so I could use some of it to keep an eye on her. When we arrived at her house, she said, "I'd like to invite you in, but I'm afraid you might take it the wrong way." "What do you mean by that?" "I asked you might think I'd want to get back at Jim by sleeping with another guy, and chose you for that. But that's not why I wanted to invite you over. What I want is to have the chance to learn everything you know about Jim and what he's been up to. You'd be safe with me. If I ended up in your bed, I'd be no better than Vicky, and I won't let myself sink to that level." I followed her into her house and into the living room. She gestured toward the couch and asked if I'd like something to drink or if she should make coffee. I wouldn't say no to coffee. I don't plan to stay too long if I'm here. When your husband arrives, I might go after him again. He won't be coming home before I left him. I told him not to come back. I told him that if he did, I'd shoot him. Would you really do that? Probably not. But he knows I'm furious and he knows my temper when I'm mad. He also knows I have a gun. You have a gun. I asked you sound surprised. It's just aside from cops. I've never met a woman who owned a gun. I bought it for protection when I have to drop off the day's cash at the bank's night deposit. And Jim knows I know how to use it, as she headed to the kitchen to brew the coffee. I couldn't help but wonder why her husband was having an affair with my wife when he had someone like Norma at home. She was an attractive woman. And if I weren't still attached to Vicky, I might even imagine myself taking an interest in her. Well, I wasn't planning on staying attached to Vicky much longer. So who knows? Norma returned and sat beside me on the couch. "The coffee will be ready in about 5 minutes. So how long has Jim been seeing your wife?" "About a month, as far as I know. That's when I hired someone to watch her, though it could have been going on longer. Looking back, I think something changed in our marriage around 2 years ago, but I've been suspicious of Vicky for just over a year. I believe she's been cheating on me since I noticed the shift in our relationship. Jim could be the only one, or he might be one of many. It just so happened that I caught her with him." "What did she say when you confronted her?" "I haven't done that yet. I figure she'll know. I'm aware when your husband calls her tomorrow, I'm curious to see how she'll handle it." "You've known about this for a whole month, and let her keep doing it." When I became completely certain of her affair, I went to a lawyer to get information about the divorce process. It turns out we live in a no-fault divorce state. It doesn't matter who did what to cause the divorce in a no-fault state. Everything is split evenly. I don't care what the laws say. I'm not about to reward Vicky for stabbing me in the back. As soon as I found out how the divorce would proceed, I started moving things around and hiding assets. Vicky might get 50%, but it'll be 50% of a much smaller sum than it was a month ago. So what can you tell me about Jim and your wife? They meet every Monday and Thursday. Those are the 2 evenings when Vicky is supposedly playing cards with some sorority sisters from college or attending her book club meetings at the library, which she supposedly belongs to. Those are also the nights Jim is supposed to be at bowling league or attending lodge meetings. He stayed over at my place 3 nights when I had to go out of town for work. That's how I got these videos. I don't know if it was the first and only time, but I travel about once a month, so this might have been a regular thing for them. I guess that explains Jim's sudden business trips. They always seem so abrupt, but I never even suspected they might be fake. So what are you planning to do? Get rid of his worthless backside. But I'm not going to give him time to hide assets. First thing, Monday morning, I'll hire a lawyer. It's a shame they don't work on Saturdays, otherwise I'd meet with one tomorrow. Actually, I know someone who does work on Saturdays. If you're serious, I can get in touch with him. I'm serious. I took out my cell phone and dialed a speed dial number. When they answered, I switched to speakerphone and said, "No need to rush. I don't need you to bail me out." "How did you pull that off?" "Seems like he wasn't very popular, and no one bothered to call the police. You must be one of the luckiest people." "I know I'll take all the luck. I can get brother. I'm on speakerphone and right now I'm talking with this jerk's wife. She told me that if lawyers worked on Saturdays, she'd be waiting at their door. First thing in the morning. I know you're not usually chasing ambulances, but would you be willing to take on her case?" Are you kidding with everything you've got on her husband? It's a sure win. Al. Right then, Norma. Meet my fraternity brother Sam Medway. Sam, this is Norma. I handed her the phone, then asked her the bathroom was, and stepped away to give her some privacy to talk. Once I was done, I returned the phone was still on speaker, so I said, I'm back. We'll take care of everything. Take care of yourself. I'm heading to bed. We'll talk later, he said. Before ending the call, I put the phone back in my pocket, and Norma said Sam told me he'd file the papers first thing Monday morning, and Jim will be served at work that afternoon. He said he can do it quickly because all he has to do is copy your documents and replace my details with yours. Will your wife be served on Monday too? That's the plan, and after that? Then, the real dance begins. Dance. Vicky won't go quietly. She'll hire a lawyer and fight the divorce. She'll create every possible obstacle, and I'll do my best to work around them. Sam says she'll probably try to get the court to mandate counseling. She can't stop the divorce, but she might figure that if she makes it expensive enough, I'll back down. Could you not a chance? I might have overlooked a single mistake, but a long-term affair, that's not going to happen. And there's also what she said about me during their private conversations. Since I plan to share everything I have with you, I should warn you. She didn't exactly paint you in a great light during their talks, either. It makes me wonder why they even stayed with two losers like us. Oh, I know exactly why Jim stayed with me. I'm the breadwinner in this family. And the best part, at least for me, is that I won't have to hear all that nonsense about it being not my fault. I have a rock-solid prenup. If you have money, why couldn't you hire a private investigator? That money is in a trust fund. I don't fully access until I turn 30. I still have 16 months to go. I can only use it for medical or educational expenses until then, but there's more to it. I earn a third more at my job than Jim does, and it's my income that lets us live the lifestyle we do. Even so, I don't have extra funds lying around for a private investigator. In some ways, it might partly be my fault that Jim got involved with your wife. How so? If I had let him know. I was suspicious when I first thought he was cheating. He might have stopped. The prenuptial agreement was very clear when it came to infidelity. He knew exactly what he stood to lose if I caught him, but I guess it shows what he really thinks of me, that I'm too naive or ignorant to figure out what he's doing. When can I get copies of what you have? Sam has everything when you go to sign the paperwork. Just let him know. I asked him to give you copies. I checked the time and said I should be going. May I call you now and then to check in on how things are going? I really hope you do, and I want to thank you again for the gift you've given me. Maybe sometime you'll let me take you to dinner to show my appreciation. I'd be glad to. I'll call you once the dust settles at my place. I have no idea what's waiting for me at home. Your husband might have recovered enough by now to call Vicky. I didn't intend for her to find out about my plans until she received the divorce papers on Monday. I guess I should have thought of that before going after your husband. Well, it's too late to worry about that now. When I got home, Vicky looked as usual, so I assumed her lover hadn't called her. She greeted me with a kiss, then asked why I was late. I told her that Al, my boss, wanted to celebrate signing the Johnson contract. So we stopped for a couple of cocktails. I called to let you know, but you didn't answer either your cell or the house phone. I went out and left my cell on my desk. I didn't hear the house phone ring. Have you eaten? I had a few drinks, so I'm fine. Would you like some dessert? No. Do you want a little something? What exactly? I asked. Nast. Let's go to the bedroom, and I'll show you. I looked at her, and since I didn't respond, she must have thought I was slow to catch on because she added, We haven't made love in almost a week, and I'm feeling a bit in need. I knew what she meant, but my hesitation came from wondering whether I even wanted it. Vicky wasn't exactly my favorite person at that moment, but then I figured I'd better take what I could get, while I still could. Who knew how long it might be before I'd have another opportunity? Once Vicky was served with the divorce papers, I smiled at her and said, I'll race you to the bedroom. Once we got there, You'd never have guessed from her behavior that she thought I was lacking in any way. I discovered from a video of her with her new friend that she told him I was a poor excuse of a partner who never came close to meeting her needs. According to her, I barely last a minute and then drift off to sleep. She also claimed I wasn't willing to show affection in the ways she wanted, and that I'd be shocked if she ever suggested anything new or exciting. All of it was completely untrue. I'd always been open to what she wanted and had never turned her down or ignored her. And as far as physical concerns went, I'd always considered myself pretty average at 16 centimeters. Not that it had ever been an issue. The only part that might be true was that I couldn't satisfy her I'd always thought I had. If that wasn't the case, then Vicky must have been a great actress to have faked all the satisfaction I thought I'd given her. But there had to be some reason she'd strayed. So maybe I hadn't satisfied her after all. Maybe she was secretly insatiable. But that seemed unlikely, otherwise she'd need far more than she was getting from this guy. That doesn't matter. I decided to start by doing exactly what she claimed I'd never do. I gave her all the attention she wanted, making sure she reached her climax. Then, I went further, taking my time and watching the clock to ensure it wasn't just a quick moment. I continued trying something different that she'd never expected from me, and before the night was over I made sure she felt it twice more. This wasn't a quick experience. It was about proving something, and I think I did just that. Then, for the first time I could remember, I did exactly what Vicky always said I would. I rolled over and fell asleep. I wondered what went through her mind. It was the first time in my life I hadn't held her afterward or fallen asleep in her arms. I hoped she lay awake, wondering, or maybe even worrying about the change. Our Saturday ritual was to wake up, shower, and then go out for breakfast. But that Saturday Vicky changed the plan. She woke me with a morning kiss, something she hadn't done in years, and I wondered if it was because of how I'd reacted the night before. Was she unsettled by the fact that I'd simply rolled over and gone to sleep? I might never know, but I went with the flow once more, since I had no idea when I'd have the chance again. After the divorce papers were served on Monday, her attention led to morning intimacy, which then led to a shared shower, bringing us back to bed. We never made it to breakfast, and instead we had to settle for lunch. I spent the rest of the day doing typical weekend chores, mowing the lawn, weeding the flower beds, and washing the cars. Good thing. I decided to make the most of things while I still could. At dinner, Vicky informed me that playtime was over for a bit, and Flo had arrived a day earlier than expected. Sunday was a regular day and I spent it working around the house. Around noon, Vicky's mom came by to pick her up for a shopping trip. As soon as they left, I called Norma to see how things were going on her end. She told me she'd gone to Sam's office and signed the necessary papers to start the divorce process. She got copies of the photos and videos, went home, and reviewed them. I was actually in a good mood when Jim got home. He walked in, like nothing had happened, and I told him to leave. He told me it was his house as much as it was mine, and he wasn't going anywhere. I left the room and came back a minute later with my gun, telling him he had until the count of 10 to walk out the door. I said that if he was still there when I got to 10, he'd be leaking red. He saw from my face that I wasn't kidding and got out of there. Would you really have gone through with it? After all the trash he said about me in those videos, bet I would have. How are things going at your place? Things are calm. Apparently Vicky hasn't heard anything about your husband either, that, or she's an incredibly good actress. But when I think about it, I realize she probably is. She convinced me for years that she was a faithful, loving wife. Well, live and learn. Did Sam tell you when your papers will be ready? He said he'd file the petition with the court first thing in the morning and would arrange for Jim to be served whenever I wanted. I don't know what your plan is, but I told him to have Jim served at work sometime after lunch. That was my plan too. Of course I was hoping it would be a huge surprise for her, but now that seems unlikely. Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin things for you. You didn't. I messed it up myself by going after your husband on Friday night. Even if your husband doesn't call her, he'll likely tip her off that I'm onto her when they meet up and talk at work on Monday. What matters is that this will finally be over, aside from the legal proceedings. and I'll be able to start living my life again. Can we meet on Monday evening? I'll treat you to dinner as promised, and we can have a drink or two to celebrate. I won't know until tomorrow evening. If I can, I'll be busy moving out. As soon as Vicky leaves for work, the house belongs to her. Her parents gave it to her when they retired and moved to Arizona. I'll keep the offer open. Call me if you can't make it. Even though the house was in Vicky's name, it would still be up for discussion in the divorce. When her parents gave her the house, it still had a mortgage and Vicky took it on. It might have been under her name, but half of the mortgage payments came from my salary. I planned to try to recover some of that money, and Sam said I had better than average odds of success. When Vicky returned home from shopping, she cooked dinner, and afterward we sat on the couch watching TV until it was time for bed. In bed, she held me close, what felt like a final embrace. In the morning, I kissed Vicky goodbye, and she told me she'd likely see me at home and have dinner ready. When I returned, naturally, she assumed I'd be going to work. But she was mistaken. I had taken the day off and planned to be moved out. By the time she got back from work, I stopped by a local restaurant for breakfast to give Vicky time to leave. After eating, I went to the house, made sure she was gone, then went inside, called my brother and started packing my things. My brother Tom showed up about 30 minutes after I called him, and by 1 o'clock we had moved all my belongings out of the house and into Tom's garage, where they would stay until I found a place of my own. Tom and his wife Pat were letting me stay in one of their spare bedrooms until I got settled. I called Sam, and he told me they planned to serve Vicky and Norma's husband. At around 2:30 p.m., on a sudden impulse, I called Norma and asked if she'd like to keep me company. While we waited for the phone calls we expected after our spouses were served, she invited me over. I arrived at her place shortly after 2, and as we sat at her kitchen table sipping iced tea, we talked about what we thought would happen once the papers were served to our two cheaters. I figured Vicky would call me and insist I was blowing things out of proportion, saying we needed to sit down and talk. "Are you going to?" Norma asked. No, all Vicky would do is lie to me and give the usual excuses cheaters make when they're caught. It's not what I think. She only loves me and will work it out, along with the rest of the nonsense from the cheater's handbook. She's been lying to me since she started seeing your husband, and maybe even with others before him. I won't believe a word she says. So why waste time talking to her? That pretty much sums up what I expect to hear from Jim. Can we talk about something other than these two jerks? Of course we can. How about those Bronchos? I joked. But she surprised me by saying it all depends on how Manning plays. He's been a bit inconsistent over the last couple of seasons so far. This year he's prone to interceptions. If he can pull it together, the Bronchos just might go all the way. I was impressed. She'd summed up my own thoughts exactly. We started talking about football, discussing Denver's defense, when my cell phone rang. I saw it was Vicky calling, glanced at the clock. It was already 2:30, showtime. I said, switching to speaker mode as I answered. "Good afternoon, this is Bob. What's this crap about a divorce? It's what a person usually does when they find out their so-called loving wife is a cheating liar." "What are you talking about? What gives you the right to call me a cheating liar? Isn't that exactly what you were doing when you were with Jim, by the way?" His wife agrees. In case you missed it, he got served too. Jim. What the hell are you talking about? From the photos and videos my private investigator collected for me? Photos, videos? I really hope you're not about to tell me that this is all some big mistake, that it's not you in those photos and videos. I might believe you have a long-lost twin cousin or something like that. But there's no way you can convince me that Jim also has a twin, and that both twins happen to meet and just happen to be caught on camera by my investigator. Admit it. Vicky, you're caught. We'll talk about this when we get home tonight. No, we won't. When you get home, you'll find that I've moved out from now on. Any contact between us will go through my lawyer. Goodbye. Vicky. As soon as I ended the call, Norma's phone rang and she looked at the screen. "It's Jim. He never calls me during the day," she laughed, adding, "I wonder what happened." She answered and put it on speaker. "Hello,
It's me. What the hell is this divorce? Nonsense. Norma looked at me and said they must be reading from the same script. What her husband demanded. I was just telling Bob that it sounds like you and your girlfriend are following the same script. What you just said was almost word for or what she said when she called him. Who's this guy? Bob. I'm her future husband, I replied. Why are you with my wife? Norma answered, we're reviewing the videos his private investigator got of you and his wife, critiquing your performance. We've pretty much concluded. You, too, wouldn't make it in the adult film industry. Oh yeah, she's way better in bed than you are. You're full of it, I said. Norma is miles better than the woman I was married to, and he's certainly way better than you ever were, even on your best days, added Norma. We exchanged smiles in a high five before she continued, and I'll tell you the same thing, he told his cheating wife just a few minutes ago. From now on, all contact between us will go through my lawyer. His business card should be in the paperwork you were served. I'll let you into the house at 6 this evening to pick up your clothes and other things, but know that while you're here, I'll be holding a loaded gun with one in the chamber and the hammer cocked. He was silent for a second or two, then turned his attention to me, saying, You punk, you took a cheap shot at me and I'm coming to find you to settle the score. You won't have to look far. I'll be sitting on the porch steps when you come by to get your stuff tonight. Don't forget to bring you a game. I've got a lot of anger to release, and giving you a beating sounds like the perfect way to let it out. He didn't respond, and after about 30 seconds, Norma decided he was done talking and ended the call. Are you really going to sit on the steps and wait for him? I said I'd be there, and I don't want him thinking I'm either a liar or afraid of him. I'll have dinner ready in case you work up an appetite. I have a couple of apartments. I want to check out this afternoon, but I'll be back by 5, just in case he decides to show up early. I have plenty of room here. You could move in with me. I appreciate the offer, but it wouldn't look right. I'm just offering you a room, not privileges. It still wouldn't look right, and I won't give that cheater anything she could try to use against me. I feel nothing for her and don't want to leave any room for her to make a move. The offer stands if you change your mind. I wasn't too impressed with the apartments I viewed, and by 10 to 5 I was already at Norma. There were porch swing chairs outside, and Norma brought out a tray with a pitcher of iced tea and a plate of cookies. We sat on the swing talking about our situation. What are you planning to do about your ex-wife? Norma asked just what I've already done, moving out and filing for divorce. No, revenge. No, I don't see the point I do something to her. Then she retaliates and it keeps escalating until we're both exhausted. It'd be a waste of time for revenge to be worth it. You have to care about the person enough to make the effort, and honestly, I don't care enough about Vicky to waste my time. At 20 to 6, a car pulled up to the house. Her husband got out, looked at us sitting on the swing, walked around to the back of the car, opened the trunk, and pulled out a baseball bat. As he approached the porch, he smiled broadly and said, I did what you asked. I'm bringing my agave, pointing the bat in my direction. I was glancing around looking for something to even the odds, when I heard a loud bang and saw her husband fall to the ground. I turned to see Norma holding what looked like a small .45 caliber Colt aimed at her downed husband. You crazy bee, he shouted. You shot me. Yes, I did, you idiot, but only in the leg. You can thank your lucky stars. I know how to handle this thing. She set the gun down beside her on the swing, pulled her cell phone out of her pocket, and called 911. My husband came at me with a baseball bat and I had to shoot him. He needs an ambulance. No, he's on the ground, writhing in pain and yelling at me. He can't hurt me. Yes, I understand. I'll put it away as soon as the police arrive. No, not unless he manages to get up and come at me again. If he does, I won't just try to wound him. I'll empty the magazine into his center mass. She hung up and said you'd better go before the police arrive. No sense getting you involved in this. No, I'll back you up. Go inside, grab all the materials you got from Sam and bring them out here. We'll tell the cops that I was bringing you the files and happened to be here. Just as he came at you with the bat, I heard him shout, Divorce me, will you? I'd sooner hurt you than let that happen. He'll deny everything and claim we're lying. So what, it'll still be 2 of us against him, and the bat is right there next to him, covered in his fingerprints. We'll tell the truth about everything up until the moment he pulled up to the house. We'll explain that we were waiting together for those frantic calls from him and Vicky, what was said, and that you told him he could come by at 6 to pick up his things. I left briefly to bring you the photos and videos and planned to be here by 6 to be around in case he tried anything. I arrived just after him and saw everything. You think this will work as long as we stick to the story it should. While we talked, the jerk was rolling around on the ground, clutching his leg and cursing. Norma went inside to get the files, and when she came back we sat on the porch swing listening to her husband whine, waiting for the cops. We heard the sound of sirens, and within a minute 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb. 4 officers got out with their guns drawn, aiming in our direction. They spread out and approached the porch. As Norma and I raised our hands to show we weren't armed, 2 officers went over to the man lying on the ground who was crying out. "She shot me, that witch shot me." By the time the officers had secured the scene, the ambulance had arrived and they took him away. I told the officers to handle the baseball bat carefully as it was evidence. They separated. Norman and me took us to the station and placed us in different rooms. A detective came in and I told him my side of the story. 3 hours later I was released and brought back to Norma's house, where I picked up my car and headed to Tom's place. They kept Norma until noon the next day. She called me to let me know she was home. The police must have believed our story, because the only charge she faced was for discharging a firearm within city limits, and they released her on her own recognizance. We compared notes on our time at the station and concluded that everything should be fine. "I'd invite you for dinner, but given the circumstances, I think it's best we keep some distance for a while." I agreed, but told her I'd keep in touch by phone. At 4:00, Norma called to tell me that the story had made it into the local newspaper and asked if I'd seen it. I hadn't, so I went to the store and bought a copy. I wasn't mentioned, but Norma and her husband were. The article stated that her husband was in the hospital, though not in critical condition, and that Norma had been charged but released on her own recognizance. That day Vicky called my cell phone 11 times and I deleted all 11 messages before deciding to answer the 12th. I was a bit sharp when I picked up "What the hell do you want?" Didn't you understand that all communication is to go through my lawyer? I need to talk to you, Bobby. I need you to hear me out. I need to explain what happened and how it happened. I need to show you that I love you and don't want to lose you. That's what you need, Vicky. But what I need is to be done with a lying cheater. This is the last call I'm taking from you. I'm going to fight the divorce, Bobby. I'm hiring a shark lawyer, and I'll fight you every step of the way. I've spoken with friends who've gone through divorces and I know what I can do. You still don't get it. Vicky, you can't stop the divorce. You can delay it, slow it down and make it expensive, but you can't prevent it unless I give in. You can't make me take you back. You can't force me to live with you. All you can do, Vicky, is spend a lot of money for both of us on lawyers and court fees. If you want to pay your lawyer for a couple of years, go ahead. In the end, no matter what you do, I'll get the divorce. I paused, as if struck by a thought, and then added, "Actually, maybe you fighting the divorce would work out in my favor. I could ask my lawyer to simply halt the divorce proceedings. Honestly, I don't need it finalized, since I don't plan to remarry, so there's no need for me to stay single. I'd save money on the whole deal, no big legal bills, no court-ordered alimony, and no judge involved in dividing our assets. Yes, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea. Go ahead. Vicky, fight it." "Yes, that works for me, who knows? Maybe someday you'll meet some guy and want to get married, and then you'll want to divorce yourself. You'll have to pay for a lawyer and all the court costs, and if I don't resist, I won't have to pay a dime. On the other hand, maybe I'll decide to fight it just to keep you and your new love from getting married. So here it is, Vicky, your choice. Sign the papers and send them in, and it'll all be over in a few months. Resist and I'll do exactly what I just described. The one thing both options have in common is that as far as you're concerned, I'm gone and not coming back. Goodbye." Vicky and I hung up. Over the next month, a few things happened. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't. Vicky didn't sign or return the papers, but she also didn't hire a lawyer to contest the divorce. Sam thinks she believes that if she doesn't sign or return the papers, the divorce can't proceed, which means she wouldn't need to pay a lawyer. Of course, she's wrong, but it's to our advantage that she doesn't know that we have proof of her infidelity, and her lack of response means things will carry on as they are. Norma's husband was charged with making threats which allowed Normal to get a restraining order against him. All of that was good news. The not-so-good news was that Jim had hired a lawyer and was trying to contest their divorce. She couldn't lose given all the evidence she had against him, but he could slow down the process and make it costly for her. Another piece of bad news was that the district attorney was running for re-election and had no plans to drop the charges against Norma. We figured it was because his opponent might try to use it against him, claiming he was soft on crime. Vicky didn't show up for the divorce hearing, probably still thinking that nothing would happen without her participation, and the judge granted my petition. I left the courtroom knowing that in 120 days I'd be a free man that evening. I had dinner with Norma, and she offered me a room in her home again. You don't have to worry about appearances anymore now that you've been granted the divorce that might be true for me, but not for you. You can't afford to give Jim anything he could use against you. I don't care, Sam. Told me that the divorce is a sure thing because of the infidelity in the baseball bat incident. Maybe the divorce is a sure thing, but part of it involves property division, and me living here could complicate things for you. It doesn't matter. The most he could get is half the house and a portion of our joint accounts and savings. I only have a year left until I gain access to my trust fund. I'll be fine, so I'm not worried, but I care about you. Maybe I shouldn't say this now, but over the past couple of months, I've developed feelings for you and I don't want to do anything that might make your life harder. Why do you say that? Why shouldn't you say it? Because I want to spend time with you, but I feel like I can't. Why not have you ever
considered that maybe your feelings might be reciprocated? It's not about that. I need to keep my distance from you for your own sake. I just told you I don't care what that jerk does in the divorce proceedings. I have a solid prenuptial agreement that clearly states what he's entitled to. That's only part of the problem, Norma. We can't give the district attorney or your husband anything they could use in their cases. I'll likely have to testify in both proceedings, and I need to minimize anything they could use against me. I might be able to get away with meeting you for dinner once a week and saying, we're simply keeping each other updated on our divorce cases, since it was our spouses who caused the split, and I'm not even entirely sure that once a week is wise. We need to keep some distance until the legal matters are resolved. She looked at me for a few seconds, then asked, why does life have to be so miserable? I understood exactly how she felt over the next 2 months. I invited Norma to dinner once a week. It was painfully difficult not to pursue what I truly wanted, but I forced myself to keep my distance. During the same period, I received 3 or 4 calls a week from Vicky, begging me to talk to her and come home. I simply hung up without saying a word. Norma's trial was somewhat anticlimactic. The district attorney presented his case with his primary witness being Nor's husband, of course. He denied that the bat was intended for Norma, and then slipped up, saying it was meant for me. I saw the DA's face fall when he heard Jim say that I guess he hadn't prepared his witness very well. Norma told the story we'd agreed upon, and then I gave my account. Yes, I know it was perjury, but I didn't care. This jerk had destroyed my marriage and I owed him a payback. The jury deliberated for less than 15 minutes and returned with a not guilty verdict. Jim's trial took place 3 weeks later, and the jury was out for only 20 minutes before finding him guilty. He served a year and a day, and he proved himself a fool by shouting at me in court, right in front of the judge, jury, prosecutor, and everyone in attendance. I'll get you for this, you jerk. I smiled at him. I knew that one day he'd tried to settle the score, and his outburst, now on record, would help put him back behind bars if he did. Once the 2 trials were over, I accepted Norma's offer to move in with her. On my first night there, she came into my room undressed and slipped into bed with me. I've wanted this for months, she said, placing her hand on me once. We joked over the phone to her husband that Norma was much better in bed than Vicky, and it turned out to be the absolute truth. She was insatiable, and I started to think I had a nymphomaniac on my hands that night. She reached satisfaction 5 times, 1 more than Vicky ever had. She seemed to soar when I pleased her, and I felt as if I'd set off a vacuum. When she reciprocated, we tried every position from missionary to more adventurous ones until I was too exhausted to continue. In the morning, she woke me up with a kiss, and when I came home that evening, she welcomed me with another. Before dinner that night, we managed 4 rounds and 3 the next night. Eventually, I told her we might need to slow down a bit so I'd have enough energy for work. We settled into a rhythm of once a day for 5 times a week and 2 or 3 times on weekends. I wish I could tell you that from then on we lived happily ever after, but I can't. Norma and I had a passionate romance that at times felt as if we were bound and determined to wear each other out, but eventually we realized that hot chemistry and football were all we really had in common. We liked each other very much, but love was never there still. The affection and attraction were enough to keep things going until one day she came home and told me she'd met someone she wanted to get to know better. The next day I packed up and left. I wished her the best and told her I'd always be up for a little fun if she ever needed it. "I'll keep you updated," she said. But after that, I never heard from her again, the final act in the drama that had been my life at the time. 2 days after my divorce from Vicky was finalized, she received the papers in the mail and called me, "You jerk, how could you do this to me? I never agreed to any of this crap. No alimony, you make twice as much as I do. How is that fair? And what's this nonsense about me owing you $30,000 for your share of the house? You have no share in this house. It's mine. It was always mine." I laughed and replied, "Oh, but you did agree to all of this. You agreed to it by not consulting a lawyer, and you agreed by not contesting the divorce. You can take out a second mortgage on the house to pay my $30,000. Look at it this way. Getting rid of me only cost you 30 grand. I'd call that a pretty good deal, but I didn't want to get rid of you." As I hung up, I was glad she couldn't see my face. The sad truth was that I hadn't wanted to get rid of her either, but even sadder was the fact that I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me. I believed in the old saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of English Epic. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.